You are welcome. This is the Messiah Revelation Ministry End Time Prophetic Ministry. Today we are looking at what I call the Zechariah 8:23 elevation of the Hebrew Israelites. The Zechariah 8:23 elevation of the Hebrew Israelites. In the end times, when the Messiah comes, he will exalt and elevate the status of the Hebrew Israelites, and the prophet Zechariah talks about it in Zechariah chapter 8 verse 23. And we have to go through the journey of the Hebrew Israelites from Jerusalem into captivity because of disobedience, the worship of idols. And the idol worship resulted in the captivity of the Hebrew Israelites. And the Lord told both Abraham and Moses about the captivity, and in Deuteronomy 28 verse 45 to 46, the captivity will serve as a sign that the Hebrews are the chosen of God. It means that they have a covenant relationship with the Lord, the Most High, the God of the Hebrews. The captivity resulted in the downtrodden of Jerusalem, and also the Hebrew Israelites becoming slaves all over the world. But the Lord, who is very merciful and gracious, will elevate the Hebrew Israelites in the end of this, because they are his people. They are in a covenant relationship with Elohim. And here we are looking at some of the prophets, what they have said. And the elevation is spoken of by the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 14 verse 2, which I read for the record. Isaiah 14 verse 2. And the people shall take them and bring them in their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captive they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And that is peripety. A peripety is a case of a drama where somebody was down yesterday, but miraculously the person has risen from prison to president. It's a peripety. Somebody was a prisoner and he becomes a king. The peripetous rise of Joseph in the land of bondage in Egypt. And so the prophet Isaiah is talking about the peripety, the peripetous rise of the Hebrew Israelites, where his oppressors will now be possessed by him. And those who were the oppressors yesterday, 400 years ago, 1,000 years ago, they will now be servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captive, whose captives they were, and they shall, or the Hebrew Israelites, shall rule over their oppressors. The Hebrew Israelites are living in the land of their enemies, and the time will come when the prophet Isaiah is saying that they will possess their oppressors. And before we get to that level, the time when the tables will turn, let's look at the downside of the table, let's look at the scope of the humiliation of the Hebrew Israelites. And for me to do that, I introduce you to a book, a Danish Jew in West Africa, Joseph Wolf. And it's a book written by a Danish Jew, a Danish man, someone from Denmark, who came to Ghana. And he came as a slave master. He came to work in the slave dungeon in Accra, the Christianborg Castle slave dungeon. And for those who are aware of history, Denmark was a major participant in the transatlantic slave trade. And so this young man, he claims he's a Jew. He came from Denmark and he was sent to the slave dungeon, the Christianborg slave dungeon in Accra. The Danish also had another slave dungeon in St. Thomas. And so slaves were taken from the White House in Accra and they were put on ships, Danish ships, to the Red House in St. Thomas. The transatlantic slave trade is in focus here in our analysis. And here we are looking at this guy who was an officer at the slave dungeon in Ghana. And he wrote a letter to his parents when he came to Ghana to work about slaves, to work in the business of slaves in Ghana. And so I am looking at this book, and the book is published by Sub-Saharan Publishers, a publisher in Ghana. He wrote a letter to his parents when he came to Ghana in 1836, and he was bragging about his experience in Ghana. On Thursday, 3rd November at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I set foot for the first time on Danish territory. I was not permitted to walk on my own two legs up to the citadel. No, Negroes and Negresses who had gathered in their hundreds on the beach to receive the newcomers computed for who will carry me on their hands. So he's bragging about the treatment that he received from Negroes and Negresses in Ghana, in the slave dungeon, the Christianborg slave dungeon located in Accra, the capital of Ghana. He's telling his parents in Denmark, hey, I've arrived. And I'm telling you my experience. When I arrived, there were Negroes and Negresses, and they competed to carry me on their shoulders. I was not allowed to walk on my two legs. And then he continued to brag again, and he says, page 81 of the book, this book, to serve me, I have 4 Negroes named Ahan, Noi, Ashite, and Terte. They are called boys. The 2 first mentioned are only to serve me. The 3rd is just for washing me, washing my clothes. And the 4th only for help in trading. And so he's describing 4 boys, and that's the English name for Negroes. And he's telling his parents what they did for him. These boys served me very well. They both dress and undress me, and I need not scold them at all. On the table, there is a bell that you always use when you wish to be served, and the entire servant staff appears immediately. They speak Danish very poorly, and it's often difficult to understand a Negro. So the Negroes did not speak their native language. They try to speak Dutch, the Danish language. They try to speak English. They try to speak Portuguese, because that was the language of the colonial master. And here, Joseph Wolf, who claims he is a Jew, he said the Negro served him, they carried him, they dressed and undressed him. I'm not sure how a Negro would dress a grown-up man and undress him at the same time, but it is even worse than this. When you are walking, you usually have one of your boys with you to stand and chase away the mosquitoes and the African flies. So there was a special Negro. His duty was to walk along with the white slave master to drive away mosquitoes. He was serving his master. And so we are talking about how the slave master abused and subjugated the Negro, the Hebrew Israelites. Of course, this man, Joseph Wolf, he has written somewhere that he heard the Negro speaking Hebrew. And I was not surprised, because the Negroes are the Hebrews, and they were taken on slave ships away from the Negro land to the lands of captivity in America, in the Caribbean, up to Suriname, and up to Brazil, and beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, in the Middle Passage. And so when I quote Isaiah 14 verse 2, I'm saying that the time will come when the Hebrew Israelites they will rule over their oppressors, and the oppressors will be their servants and their handmaids. And that is part of the elevation. But here I'm talking about a special elevation, and this is what I call the Zechariah chapter 8, 23 elevation. And so let's read what the prophet Zechariah is talking about the elevation, what he's saying about the elevation. There said the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the shirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we'll go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. So the prophet Zechariah is saying that at the time of the elevation of the Hebrew Israelite, the Negro and the Negresses, 10 Gentiles will hold the shirt of a Negro and beg the Negro that, oh, master, let's go to Jerusalem, because we've heard that you have a God. We heard that your God has delivered you. You were the downtrodden, the wretched of the earth. You were at the bottom of the ladder. But I've heard that you have a God, you have a Redeemer. The Redeemer lives. He is the God of the Hebrews. He is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. So let's go so that we can see your God and worship your God. And that is the time when the prophet Zechariah is saying, 10 Gentiles, they will be begging to hold the shirt of a Hebrew Israelite and have the privilege of walking with the Hebrew Israelites, so that the Gentile will see the God who is the God of the Hebrews, the God. His name is the Ancient of Days. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So Zechariah 8:23 is saying that 10 men shall take out the shirt, and they shall take hold of the shirt of him that is a Jew. Okay, the Bible is using the word Jew, the King James Bible here, and I'm not surprising because I'm not surprised at all. It's not surprising to me because in Genesis 14:3, Abraham is referred to as a Hebrew, and here Zechariah is making a point that at the time of the elevation of the Hebrew, of course, the Bible here is using the word Jew. At the time of the elevation of the Hebrew, 10 men will hold the shirt of the Hebrew, 10 Gentiles. The tables will turn because as we read this book, Joseph wove a Jew and a Danish slave master. He was bragging to his mother that when he came to Negro land, the Negro land, he had the privilege of being carried on the shoulders of 4 Negroes and Negresses. The tables will turn. The Zechariah prophecy in Zechariah 8 verse 23 is saying that at that time of the elevation and exaltation of the Negroes and the Negresses, 10 Gentiles will hold the shirt of a Negro, saying that I know your God is alive, because we heard that he just delivered you from all the 4 corners of the earth. And we just heard that you are the true chosen of God. So let's go to Jerusalem where your God lives, so that we will also worship your God, the eternal God, the God who doesn't lie, the God who tells the truth, the God who will fulfill his promise. And the Lord said in Revelation chapter 3, verse 9, which I read for your record, I read for your attention. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. The Messiah is talking about the end time elevation and also the exposure of those who have stolen the identity of the Hebrew Israelites. The tables will turn, and those who say they are Jews but they are not, they will come and worship the true people, the true children of God. And the Messiah is talking about it in both Revelation 2 verse 9 and Revelation 3 verse 9. So the Messiah is saying the same thing that the prophet Isaiah is saying in Isaiah 14 verse 2. You, the Hebrew Israelite, you shall rule over your oppressors, who will be your servants and your handmaids. And the prophet Zechariah is saying the same thing in Zechariah chapter 8 verse 23. A time will come, the tables will turn, and Gentiles, 10 of them, it could be 100 of them, It could be a multitude of Gentiles when they see one Negro walking on the street, when they see one Negress walking on the street, when they see one Hebrew Israelite walking on the street, they will jump. They will jump on him and hold his shirt and beg him, let's go and see your Lord, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, who has delivered you. We didn't know that you have a Redeemer. And that is what I call here the Zechariah 8:23 elevation of the Hebrew Israelite. Your Messiah is coming. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He will come and deliver you. Your salvation is coming very soon. You just watch and repent and wait on the Messiah and keep your garment free from all things that are filthy. Keep yourself holy because your Lord is holy. He is coming, and every eye will see. You'll be a light unto the Gentiles. They will come and hold your shirt and beg you, please help me to get close to your King, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And that is the Zechariah 8:23 elevation of the Hebrew Israelite in the end of days, which is very soon, because the final trumpet of heaven has already sounded based upon revelation that I received. My email is raptureafrica@yahoo.com. I'm leaving it in the description box. Thank you very much.